Hey everyone, so yes, that little exchange was something that really happened in an MMO I was playing years ago. And while you're not playing a blacksmith per se, you are indeed basically taking a position where you are buffing and facilitating what the combat classes are doing. Anyways, so let's just run this and then I'll explain from a coding point of view what I did. Although it's getting harder and harder to go through all the details, all the minutia. So at this point, this is becoming more of a broad devlog rather than a tutorial anymore at this point because there's just too many little things to cover that now that I've shown you as much as I have, it's just recycling ideas. You're using variables to control events and then you're controlling what that value is. You're making sure that you always know what the value is and when it changes, that kind of thing. So if we go into the menu, you'll see that I've added a couple ingredients. Right now, you don't put them in the hamburger, even though some people will have lettuce and tomato in hamburger. So I'm going to do this 3 times just to demonstrate that it does indeed bring in different clientele. So we'll put just the hamburger on the menu, and it still doesn't write here. That will be something I'll add at some point. And then we start with the day. And here we go. We now have a warrior showing up for her hamburger. So because you have a hamburger, which say it's going to buff HP, they show up. There's also a little blurb here. They tell you what they're going to do. That's really just kind of placeholder text at the moment. I'm not sure how much I want to utilize that. I think it makes it a little bit more familiar. You want to know what this person is doing, whether it's humorous or actual storytelling, we'll see. It's a good opportunity to be meta, where you could say, yeah, I'm going into battle with an easily distracted healer, so I need to have, my HP max, that kind of thing. So, anyways, because of the hamburger, they warriors will now show up. Sorry, forgot how to speak for a second there. So you can make their meal for them. As you noticed that this does indeed update when they show up now. And we make the hamburger and we give it to them and they disappear. Now this doesn't clear yet. That's an easy thing to take care of, but haven't done that yet. As I said, there's a bunch to cover in this video as it is. Now, what I might eventually add is when they get their meal, maybe they'll walk over to a chair or maybe they'll appear on a chair and they'll sit here and eat for a little while. That will be one of the last things I add if I add it, because at that point, that's really not gameplay. That's more aesthetics and trying to give the sense that you have this kind of bustling community that you're servicing. So we'll see if I eventually add that. So now we'll run this again. And to demonstrate that this really is working, this time we will make a salad. And here comes the mage. So there it is. That is the core functionality that I said that I wanted to have, that the menu will drive customers and that she's asking for the right type of thing. It's not just random. They really are looking for that. She's probably not going to be in the final game. There's a bunch of problems. One, she doesn't cast a shadow for some reason, and I've checked every one of the mesh renderers says to cast shadow, so I'm not sure why she's not. Also, the animation was very stilted, so even though the animation looked right in Mixamo, when I exported it into Unity, it doesn't look right for some reason. This is also a free character, so it's not like I'm committed to use this, but I needed something to wrap the code around. So that demonstrates that indeed depending on what you're making will determine who shows up. Whoops, I forgot to tab over to her, make the salad, and she leaves with her salad. And we'll do this just one more time with both of them so you know that I haven't put my thumb on the scale and making this just look like it's working. So we add the hamburger, and it doesn't have to be just this one. Could be the other. You could add the other ones as well. And then we add the salad, and now they both should show up. And sure enough, they do. So think about that. You add more and more to the menu, you'll have a greater range of classes showing up. So that's the core functionality that I discussed a couple videos ago. So yeah, so that gets us basically to where we want. Now to the point it's getting purchasing the assets for the final models. Coming up with a greater range of meals because probably should have more on the salad than just lettuce and tomato. And also, I might have to purchase, like I mentioned, there's a another constructor set. I had purchased the hamburger constructor. There's like an all-in-one that also has like hot dogs and tacos and pizza, so we could add some of those ingredients here. And let's see what else. So I think as far as the demonstration, that's what I wanted to show. And now we can get into the coding as well. So let's take a quick look at add to menu. So this has text button. And let's see if we added anything new here. Okay, so we added a couple new variables. Let's go to GameFlow. So we added this one, public static int, and it's an array, unlock classes. So clearly, this is storing whether or not a certain class has been unlocked. As you've seen, we unlocked the warrior and we unlocked the mage. The only problem with this, it's not that there's a functional issue, it's self-documentation. This doesn't tell you, because I'm using numbers, this doesn't tell you what's what. So at the moment, just undo that. So at the moment, because of the decisions I make later on in the coding, this represents the warrior, this represents the mage, and there's only two classes so far, so the other ones don't represent anything. So I might change this from int to string and then actually write the word warrior, mage, that kind of thing. So that's the only problem with this is it says this is unlock classes, but there's no context for what these numbers mean. So you'd want to do a little remarks or external documentation that says what each position means. So this position, if it's a 1, it means warrior has been unlocked. If this position is a 1, it means the mage has been unlocked. Here are the three customers that can be spawned. So if you click on the GM object, let's go back to this one. So the GM object, here are those new variables. So the warrior object, the mage object, the boss. We didn't show you the boss yet. I'm still working on that. So basically, this creates those variables because it's public. It makes it accessible in the inspector, and then you can just drag and drop the prefab onto that. So that's how the GM object is aware of those customers and then can spawn them. So I also think those are the main ones. That's the main functionality as far as how that works. As far as instantiation, in the start section, we now have customer spawn. And in customer spawn, so it waits briefly. You can wait whatever amount of time you want because obviously you don't want something to happen immediately. You want to give the user a few seconds to adjust, although I only gave them half a second because it's just me testing it. And then here I use that variable that I was just talking about. If unlock class 0 equals 1, then instantiate the warrior. So this is what really makes position 0 be the warrior because I'm saying instantiate the warrior. There's really no other I could change this at any time, basically, is what it is. So there isn't anything else that makes the warrior be associated with the 0 position other than this line here, because I'm saying if it's the 0 position, instantiate the warrior. Then we wait 2 seconds just so they don't show up at the same time. And I now check unlock class position 1. If it's set to 1, then go ahead and instantiate the mage object. I'm not going to get into the mage or the warrior animations or the modeling. That is a separate kettle of fish as far as I'm not a 3D modeler. I'm not an animator. Occasionally I can use animations from Mixamo, but the results aren't always great. I believe I said a few minutes ago that the animation on the mage was really stilted, even though it looked fine in Mixamo. For some reason, when I brought it into Unity, it just doesn't look great. But again, those models are probably just placeholder. So that is the core functionality as far as getting them to show up. Now, what we haven't shown you yet is how do these become unlocked? So how does position 0 get set to 1? How does position 1 get set to 1? Because we showed you the creation of the array, but we haven't shown you how those values get modified. And I believe that is done in the text button. So text button, this is the functionality, the script that is attached to the text buttons within the menu creation. So I'm just going to pause the video for a second. Okay, so actually something different here. So this full menu, I don't think I had this in the previous video, so I wanted to mention this as well. Before, I think it just automatically set it to position 0 or position 1 or position 2. So what this says is we're now tracking the index, because again the index is at position 1, position 0, position 1, position 2. And so every time you add a new item to the menu, so when you click on, let's jump back to here. So when you click on add to menu, is if you notice, that's what it's checking for, if object name is add to menu. So we are now adding to the current menu index position in full menu. We're now creating that created menu item. This is a calculation. This value is incremented every time you click on a food item. And so that cumulative value is being set into this position, whether it's position 0, position 1, position 2. And as you can see, menu index then gets incremented. So this number starts at 0. You click on add to menu item because you've added an item. This would then go to 1. So that way, if you add something else, it goes into position 1. If you add another one, position 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so on and so forth. So I had referenced this in a previous video, but I hadn't actually done it, so now I've done it. So now this is a variable. Now, as far as knowing what to unlock, we have to go to, I believe it's menu create, right. So what this does, and this isn't perfect, this is something that's going to have to be refined. So menu create is attached to the various food items. And as we said, each food item has a food value. That way you can easily determine what is in there. Is there meat? Is there lettuce? Is there cheese? Because each has its own position. So that's position in the ones, tens, hundreds, so on and so forth. Okay, so what I do, so on mouse down, so when you click on one of those ingredients that we're just looking at, if the food value has a certain value, in this case it's 1,000, because if you click on the hamburger, it's 1,000. So if the value is 1,000, this is just debugging to test, so you don't have to do that. You can eliminate that. So gameflow.unlock classes position 0 is equal to 1. So again, this is what makes it be the warrior, because this is here I create the association between the food and the position in the array. And again, the position in the array, so we said that because of this, that's going to be warrior, that's going to be mage, so on and so forth. So if you're clicking on something that is worth 1,000, and again, the only thing in the 1,000th position is the hamburger, that's sufficient to unlock the warrior, because the warrior is going to want something to increase HP. If food value, and this probably, I chose greater than or equal to, whereas this one is just equal to, because we're checking for, by doing this, the two things that are equal to this are both salad items. So rather than checking for them individually, I can just say greater than or equal to, because that position, so again, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s is everything to the right is 10,000, okay? So this position is for, I believe it's tomato, and then the position in front of it is lettuce, or vice versa. So rather than checking it twice, right now the only thing that can be greater than this is also a salad item, and therefore would be food, would be for the mages. And so if the ingredient you've clicked on, so again, the ingredients, if the ingredient you clicked on is greater than or equal to that, then that unlocks the mage. So unlock class position 1 gets set to 1. So again, the first position will be the warrior. The second position will be the mage. And technically, this still doesn't make it the warrior or the mage. It is the other place. It's here. It's the instantiation that actually makes it be the warrior. So this sets the value, but doesn't actually commit you to warrior. Again, this is just debug log. It doesn't have to be here. I was just testing. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, like I said, this deep into it, I really can't do the minutia anymore because there's just so much and so many little things. So I'm hoping that the broad strokes help. And let's see if there's anything else because those were the major ones. As far as getting the food to show up, so we had to create a script for the customer. So this is actually attached to the customer. There is a public game object for the speech bubble because when they show up, that little blurb appears and they tell you something. Well, that links out to another prefab, which is just a text mesh object. So if we click on one of these people, you can see speech bubble. If you click on that, it's a text mesh object. And the text mesh position, this is a public variable to adjust the Y position of this because since these are made by different creators, they don't have the same pivot or origin point. So that's just an adjustment for that. Let's just quickly scroll through. So that makes the character aware of the speech bubble. That will be used to adjust the position of the speech bubble. This gives them velocity. Again, this is very straightforward stuff. So get component rigid body velocity, and this is getting them to move straight along the z-axis towards the screen. And again, since I'm saying get component rigid body, you know that there's a rigid body component if you check the inspector. Start coroutine to stop the approach. So in other words, as soon as the object is instantiated, it's in motion. It's moving towards the screen. We want to stop when it reaches the counter. So I say start coroutine and stop approach. So if we come down to stop approach, this amount of time is dependent on how much space and how much speed your character has. So depending on how close they are to the counter, and how long it's going to take them to the counter, that's what this is. So there is nothing magical about this. This works specifically for the speed that I took. Now, the speed I took is to try to match the walk animation, because if you have them moving faster than the walk animation, it's going to look like they're moonwalking. Actually, it's going to look like they're sliding. If you have them move too slow, and it's slower than their walk animation, then it's going to look like they're moonwalking, like they're walking in place. Anyways, so that's what we have going on with this. So this is simply giving the model a chance to reach the counter. And then once they've reached and once that time has passed, then we set velocity to 0. So this is just undoing this. Again, that's another reason why I shouldn't have to go into the minutia, because we're just repeating ideas at this point. Once they've stopped at the counter, they change idle animation. I've discussed how that works before. So again, you know there's an animator component attached to the model, and we're accessing it and playing the animation called idle. If the game object.name contains war, short for warrior obviously, then I rotate them. This again is only because of the specific model that I'm using. For some reason, their idle animation, the character is not rotated the same direction. So you wouldn't have to do this with yours necessarily. I had to do this with mine because for whatever reason, the creator who made this model, that their idle animation is not facing the same direction as all the other animations. Whatever reason, don't know, so that I have to just manually override that. So that's what I'm doing. I'm saying, okay, rotate it so they're rotating. And this was just guesswork. I rotated them until they were facing the counter, which is part of the reason why there's something like a jump, like a snap when they reach there, because they're being manually rotated. And then this is what sets the order value. So in other words, previously, we were manually putting in static value. We're putting in constants here. Let's put it that way. I shouldn't say static. We're putting a constant in here, and that was the order value. Now the order is based upon the customer. So we're looking to see, is the name of the object the script attached to warrior? Then this is what they're going to want. And again, if you're going by the if you remember the numbering convention, that's the top of the bun, that's the cheese, that is the bacon, that is the hamburger, and that is the bottom of the bun. So in other words, a plain hamburger. So maybe there'll be multiple types of warriors. So if you do like a double bacon cheeseburger, maybe this more elite warrior will show up. So this is how you get the order to be associated with the individual class. You just check because again, this script is attached to the models, the heroes, the customers who are coming into your establishment, and you're simply setting the order. So right now, the warrior will always go to the first plate. The mage will always go to the third plate, and the boss will go to the middle plate. So obviously, I'm going to have to build on that. But again, this is an iterative process. So right now, each class goes to a certain plate. Ultimately, I'm going to have to add more classes going to each plate, or else you'd only have 3 classes, and that would be boring. And then it's just rinse and repeat. The script this is attached to, if the name of that object that the script is attached to contains the word mage, then this is what they want. And again, this is the one for salad because I added a couple numbers. So that right there is the 10,000ths position, and we weren't doing anything above that. Now we are. So one of these is lettuce and one of these is tomato. I just don't remember at the moment now. We talked about show order before, so this will happen. I think we mentioned this before. Again, it's the kind of minutia. This is what keeps the order from appearing until they arrive. So if show order isn't -1, then it doesn't show the order. So in other words, this is all happening. So the character walks for 6.5 seconds, and then all this happens. So in other words, we're saying don't show the order until they've reached the counter. And I think that's also done in GameFlow because GameFlow is what controls that. Yeah, show order equals -1, equals -1. So I believe this we already covered. And previously we would establish the order value as whatever was in the full menu, and we don't need that anymore. In fact, I'm going to get rid of that as a comment so it doesn't confuse anyone. Those got moved. I think that is the bulk of the change. If you want, I don't have anything that I could show you the boss, but there's no order that brings him out yet. What I'm thinking I'm going to do with the boss is that they will show up if you serve a certain amount of customers and you serve them correctly, something like that. So even getting the boss is a bit of an unlock, but I don't want it to be the same criteria. I don't want it to be, okay, you made a certain menu item. Well, you've already done that. You already had that functionality. So to unlock the boss, let's have a new mechanism, a new mechanic to do that. And so I have to think about it a little bit more, but I'm thinking it's going to be if you serve a certain amount of customers and you serve a certain accuracy, then at the end of the week, the boss shows up, kind of just like how the boss is at the end of a level, and they're going to want a certain order. And someone made a really interesting idea. I don't know if I'll do it, but I do want to mention it in just a minute. I think we're almost done with the coding. Let's check. So we have the class unlock that we talked about. We talked about how to associate the order with that class. We talked about how to unlock the class based on what you've built in the menu screen. And I believe, so this is attached to the speech bubble. I said that there is a Text Mesh Pro object that handles the text for the customer when they walk in. All this says is destroy that object in 6 seconds. There might be a better way to do that, but again, this is iterative, so I'm not worried about it. Some people say you have to be careful about unnecessarily spawning and destroying objects because of memory management. They're absolutely correct, but again, iterative. This is the still the first draft because we're still adding the basic functionality. And I think that's it. I don't think there's anything else to discuss in the other scripts, but hopefully hopefully I did good enough explanation of how this will get different customers to show up. Now, as far as the design discussion, someone commented, and I think it's on the previous video, so if you want to read it for yourself, but I certainly want to give them a shout out and give credit where credit is due. I talked about what should um, if any, what should the ramifications of giving someone the wrong order should be. And what he suggested is that you wouldn't see it on screen since we don't see the battles, but if you gave a mage something that instead increases strength, they get killed in battle, and then they never come back. And it's kind of darkly funny. I probably would keep it a little bit more family friendly, and what I'd probably do is at the end of the week, I'll have a scene where you can look at like the equivalent of Yelp reviews, and it'll have like maybe a screenshot of someone with like an arm up in a cast and be like, yeah, thanks a lot, RPG Diner. So make it a little bit more family friendly would be my thought. But yeah, so to indicate that there is some ramification for not giving the proper meal, and then that would impact how many customers you have. A game like this tends to be just like an endless game. It just keeps going on and on and on. So I don't know if I'd have a specific end to it. One of the things that get done, one of the features to games like this tends to be adding new equipment. You go from like a 2 burner stove to a 4 burner stove. You can order more food and things like that. So I'm not quite sure if there'd be an endpoint or just, once you've unlocked everything, then the person, stops playing whenever they feel like it. This is meant to be more kind of a relaxing gameplay. It's not meant to be white knuckle. There's obviously things that need to be achieved within a certain time limit, but it's meant to be more easygoing. It's not meant to be this reflex based kind of game. The other thing that he mentioned is that the commenter, they said, when the bosses show up, if you give them food, if you give them the right food, they might wipe out an entire party. And so even though you gave the customers the right food because you gave the boss the right food, they wipe out the customers, and so that's like 5 more people who won't show up to your restaurant, to your diner, cafe, whatever. Again, it's funny, but I'm not sure if I'd go that far because um, that's basically punishing you for doing what you're supposed to do. The whole game mechanic is basically matching. They say, I want this, this, this. You give them this, this, this. So that mechanic of having the boss wipe out some of your customers, you're now punishing the player for doing what they're supposed to do. So I probably wouldn't go that far. I like the idea that there's ramifications to who you serve, but I think that maybe that makes it a little bit too tough. So we'll see. But it was still a great comment, and I really appreciated the feedback and that some of you are enjoying this and really like the idea. I have vacation coming up in about a week. I think it's the week of President's Day, so I have that week off. I'm thinking that I'm going to knuckle down and get this into shape now that the broad functionality is in place. So I'll spend some time scouring the Unity store and see if I can find some good assets. And then what I'll do is at that point, I'm going to put it on itch.io and I'll flag it as early access and I'll put it on a discount. And that way, if you guys are interested in the project, you could purchase it, and those funds would be used to buy more assets. Um, and then it's completely up to you. So what I do is I do like a base price. So that would be the minimum purchase price. But if you wanted to go above that, you certainly could if you chose. Again, always your decision if you feel something is worth it or not. And so it's a matter of deciding what I think the full price would be when I'm done versus, since it's early access, it should be a discount. So maybe something like early access, it'll be $10 USD, and then the full price when it's completed, I think would be closer to $20. There's going to be, for this type of game, there's going to be a lot of functionality. It's not just like a 2D game like Hot Dog Hot Shot that you've got quite a few mechanics going on. So I'm thinking that is what I am going to do. Certainly let me know how you feel about that. If you're not interested in early access, then just don't buy it. There's absolutely there's certainly no commitment or obligation. It's just a way that I could raise funds for the final project because I kind of this happened. I was doing the tutorial, and now it turns out that this is something that I really want to do. So, okay, so I hope you found this interesting, and please do enjoy the rest of your day.